lobby is a sheet of glass. That means that we can not only see you, but we can often hear you. And sometimes our microphones can even pick you up out there. So please move closer to the police department side of the building or onto the front steps of City Hall to talk with your friends and neighbors. With that, does anyone have any questions before we begin? All right, seeing none, thanks for being here tonight and being part of the public process.
Welcome to the July 27th, 2022 meeting of the Edina Planning Commission. I know that Communications Director Jennifer Benarott covered a lot of our introductions, so thank you for that. And just a reminder that the city is committed to continuing to receive and hear your input on all matters. We've been collecting public input through our voicemail and engagement website, bettertogetheredina.org. It's important that you know all comments that have been submitted have been received and read prior to the start of this meeting. So you do not need to submit the same feedback in another way. All feedback is considered equally regardless of the way in which it was submitted. So again, tonight we have 3 public hearings, and those who will be providing public testimony remotely for public hearings can do so by calling 1-888-504-7949 and enter participant passcode 813740. Remember, you do not need to call in or comment live tonight if you've already provided feedback. And also, please do not repeat information already presented. Provide testimony if you have new comments or information to bring forward. And with that, we will go ahead and kick off our roll call tonight.
Commissioner Elkire.
Here.
Commissioner Barbaro.
Here.
Commissioner Bennett.
Here.
Commissioner Hayward. Not here, sorry. Commissioner Miranda.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Padilla. Commissioner Strauss. Here. And Chair Agnew.
Here. Thank you. So first up is our approval of our meeting agenda tonight. I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve the agenda.
Okay.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, our meeting agenda has been approved for tonight. We do not have any minutes to review this time. I think we'll be reviewing those in our next meeting. So next is our community comment. And just as a reminder, during our community comment, anyone who is here in person can provide comment on things that are not on our agenda or are not currently scheduled for a future public hearing. So with that, I will invite anyone who's in the room for our community comment. And just so you know, please state your name and address, and you will have up to 3 minutes to speak. You will have, when you have 30 seconds remaining, the yellow light will turn on, and then when you're out of time, the red light will turn on. But please, start.
Thank you. My name is Julie Risser. I live at 60. I first want to say how meaningful and important it is that the city of Edina is speaking out against racist actions that are happening in our city. But I also want to state that over a year ago, and I was thinking that the signage at Frank Tupa Park could be changed in time for summer programming last year. The problem is the information on the signs is not inclusive. Cahill School is there. It focuses on Cahill. Cahill was not the only school in Edina. Cahill was not in this area. It was in the Cahill area. There were educators in this region, including Ellen Yancey, Black pioneer, who created the first PTA. That's significant. Why isn't that on the sign? The only change that was made was that the name Yancey, which had been misspelled in the signs that were really in poor physical condition, was properly spelled. Now we have invested in new signage that is in good shape. I understand that there's going to be another revision. However, we invested in that, and this summer, children who came to the programming and children in schools throughout Edina who take the field trip to Frank Tupa Park see the signs that only talk about one demographic, and that's not okay. And that needs to change, and it needs to change before the academic year starts. It breaks my heart that we have had decades of children in Edina going to that park and seeing a very edited, scripted, racist history. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
To express my concern about the fact that people can't call in at community comment. And I would like to see that change, because what that says to our residents is you drive up in your Mercedes and we'll listen to what you have to say. But think about it. What about a single parent that wants to make a community comment? That means rounding the kids up, bringing them in and telling them they have to be quiet, or paying somebody to take care of the kids when that person comes in for a 3-minute presentation. And think about anyone who has vision problems. We probably don't want them driving to City Hall. And think about anyone who is physically challenged. It's a challenge to get here. When I pulled in here tonight, I see there's one handicapped parking spot. You can get into the building, but you can't get in here. So they'd be trapped out in the lobby. So what does that say to people? It doesn't say anything good. And I know we're supposed to be walking and biking, but fall is coming, and that's probably not a safe thing to do. And I don't know if you've driven down Valley View Road recently, but it's frightening, because where I'm driving, I'm actually driving in the bike lane. So if someone is coming at me and there's a biker there, do I say, okay, I run over the biker, or I switched into the lane and go headfirst into that car? That's a dangerous situation. And walking, not so good. Unfortunately, our Edina is not as safe as it once was. And now we have two big challenges in Edina. Climate change is huge. Oh my gosh, trees are being taken down. The heat has been unbearable, and we're encouraging people to drive. I think we need to rethink that. I just don't think that's a good idea. And if you don't have a car, that's another issue. And Uber doesn't solve that problem, because an Uber has to come and get you, take you where you need to go, and then come back and get you home. So that's adding even more. Secondly, COVID. COVID is back, and the new strain is very contagious. And for a lot of people, they're not going to be willing to come to an area that have a lot of people. So what I'd like you to do is please consider that rule and let residents know that you care and you respect their concerns and opinions. And I know what has happened the last several days in Edina, when we have always said that Edina is welcoming and inclusive. Here is a chance to actually walk the talk. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other for community comment tonight?
Good evening. Can you hear me? Okay. Jamie Weston, 6136 Brookview Avenue. I did bike here. Actually, my three-wheel recumbent, so trike, I guess. Anyway, I'm not going to do this in January, though. I have an issue with how the construction was handled, the whole construction process for the View 44 apartments on the south side of Valley View Road, just east of Wooddale Avenue. And I see so many of the construction issues as far as how the process was conducted, utilizing a vacant lot that was down the street and construction closing completely. I ran out of times on my hands how many times Valley View Road was completely closed to traffic or partially closed. Not safe for pedestrian, bicycle, dangerous for driving, city buses going down my street often being rerouted. And I don't want to see that happen again with future construction. You need to consider and ask questions of developers how they're going to do their construction process. Not just, here's the nice, beautiful building once it's done. What happens in between your approvals and when it's done? The View 44 sidewalk, amazingly, shrank. When they reestablished a new sidewalk in front of the building, suddenly it's almost half the width of what the previous city established sidewalk is. Please drive by it and look at it. I don't believe that would have been approved by the city. Did they want to just create a nice little green buffer strip this wide of grass so people on their patios could enjoy a little green buffer strip? It's not okay. You can't pass two moms with strollers passing each other on the current sidewalk. That's not okay. Please address that. So, and it's hot enough, please consider requiring the city code be changed for all new constructed homes to have solar panels put on top, either solar voltaic or solar thermal systems, and have them be required. We're not getting any cooler, we're getting hotter, and every home that gets built can help. Consider the cost stretched out over a 30-year mortgage. It's not that much. We can change the code. This does not have to be done at a state level, as I was previously told by somebody in planning. So that's not true. I know it's not true. Please give this good consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other for community comment tonight? Okay. We will now continue on to our public hearings. So the first public hearing that we have is for 5916 Kellogg Avenue, and Assistant Planner Ocker will be presenting tonight. Whenever you're ready.
Chair, members of the Planning Commission, the property in question is at 5916 Kellogg Avenue. The request is for the impervious surface requirement that was just approved and implemented in January. So this is a situation where the property is non-conforming. The house was built in 2015. It's on the west side of Kellogg Avenue. It's a two-story home with a detached two-car garage that's at an angle to the south lot line. You can see here. This is an existing survey of the property indicating the location of the garage. The garage itself didn't change. It was just the home that was torn down and rebuilt, and the existing garage remained. The property owner would like to straighten out that garage. It'll be just slightly smaller. It'll be roughly the same size, but a little bit smaller, and then there'll be a reduction in the amount of driveway area. So the request is for a 3.8% impervious surface variance. They are currently already over that requirement. So the existing hardcover is at 55.1%, and the proposed hardcover would reduce it down to 53.8%. So they're moving in the right direction, but they are not going to get to the 50% that is the current ordinance. It's not a surprise that we do have nonconformities within the city. I guess that's something that we expected, especially in the smaller lot neighborhoods. The proposed and existing coverage will remain roughly the same for building area. They will be at 29.8% because they will be reducing the garage just a little bit. So these are the elevations of the garage. They'll be 16 feet, it'll be 16 feet in height and located in the back corner. This is a photograph of the existing conditions. You can see that corner of the garage that's facing south, and then a rendering of what they would like to accomplish. They'd like to have a little bit of yard area. Currently, that garage takes up most of the yard, and there's not a lot of opportunity to use the yard. So this is the compliance table. They'll be meeting all the setback requirements. The building coverage is currently at 30%. It'll be reduced just slightly to 29.8%. The impervious surface requirement is at 50%. The existing is at 55.1%. They're proposing to reduce it down to 53.8%. And then the height of the building is well below the 18 feet maximum. So in terms of the variance, will it relieve practical difficulties? The practical difficulty is that the existing maximum impervious surface is over the required maximum by 5.1%. It's a non-conforming situation. They are trying to improve that situation by reducing coverage. The garage will be reduced in size just slightly. The existing garage behind the house is oriented at an angle to the south lot line. The homeowner just desires to create more usable rear yard area. The new garage will be just slightly smaller, and the plan reduces the impervious surface and moves the lot into closer compliance. Granting the variance will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. The applicant is hoping to rebuild the garage with the same dimensions or similar dimensions in a more practical location that is similar to other detached garages within the neighborhood. Staff does recommend approval of the 3.8% impervious surface variance for the property at 5916 Kellogg Avenue, subject to the survey date stamped July 1st, 2022, elevations and building plans dates dated July 1st, 2022, and compliance with the conditions and comments listed in the environmental engineer's memo. And with that, I will stop and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. What questions? I have one. Do you happen to remember when the ordinance was put in place for the impervious surface requirements?
It was in January. I don't know the exact date, January 2022.
Okay.
So very recently.
And prior to that, there wasn't any ordinance?
There was not.
Please.
So, Planner Acker, would it be safe, I mean, to kind of conclude that what could be affected to sort of bring it into compliance is the garage construction, and that's where they're trying to eliminate, that difference, right? So, I mean, where they could do something to improve it, they did with the garage size.
Yes, I mean, they're pretty limited given the fact they have this very long driveway. They're reducing some of the driveway area, and they've also reduced the garage just slightly by dimensions. But short of, modifying the house, removing part of the house, I don't know what else they could do.
Good, thank you.
Please go ahead.
Excuse me, quick question. Curiosity, is the part of the driveway that's in the city right-of-way counted?
No.
Okay, so it's just the part that's on the lot itself?
Correct.
And does the project include tearing out and replacing the driveway?
I don't know if it would require removing the entire driveway, but it certainly would require modification in the area that the current garage is in, because it's now behind the house or sort of halfway behind the house. So that would be a question of the property owner.
Oh, are they here?
Yes,
Oh,
they
okay,
are.
we'll wait till the right time. Thank you.
Maybe now is the right time. I would love to invite the property owner up to speak if you would like to, and then maybe even addressing Commissioner Alkire's question if possible.
Thank you.
My name is Will Allen, 5916 Kellogg Avenue. To answer your question, we hope to not have to replace any driveway, or at the minimum amount possible. And then I think Planner Acker made all the same statements that I would like to make. That I think we're we're complying with the spirit of this ordinance by reducing our impervious surface coverage, and we hope that you'll agree and approve the variance.
Thank you. Are there any questions that we have for the applicant? All right, well, thank you. We'll now open our public hearing. So first, we will hear from residents who are in person who would like to provide testimony, and then we will hear from those who call in. To participate, please call in now at 888-504-7949 and enter participant passcode 813740. Everyone will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak. Please give your full name and address, and Communications Director Jennifer Benarott will let anyone who calls in know if they go over 3 minutes. And with that, I will ask if anyone is in person here to speak for this public hearing. All right, seeing none, I will look to the call lines, and I know we've got a little bit of a lag given those that are joining us remotely. So I will just look to you to tell me if anyone calls in within the next minute or so.
I have somebody ready for you.
Perfect.
Operator, will you please unmute the caller's line? And caller, please begin by stating your full name and address for the record. That will start your 3 minutes of speaking time.
Hello, my name is Ann Thompson. I live at 5912 Kellogg Avenue, the property directly north of Will and Jess Wetterland. I'd like to call in and fully support their request for this variance. They have a lovely family, but have absolutely no backyard for their children to play in. I visit with them and their children all the time, but it always has to be in the front yard because of the property, just the ridiculous way that the garage was built when it was built, and no one in the neighborhood could understand why it was done when it was done that way. It was someone who was basically flipping the property, and I fully support their request.
Thank you so much. Any others?
I do not have anyone else on the line at this time. I'm not sure it's been a full minute. Her testimony was pretty quick. Would you like to wait a minute before moving on?
Yes, let's do that.
Okay, my clock shows it at 7:22, so I'll come back at 7:23 or when I have a caller, whichever's first.
Thank you.
Can you still hear me? This is Ann Thompson.
We can.
The neighbor directly south was hoping to call in on time. However, she did have an 8 o'clock meeting tonight, so she may still be tied up in a work meeting that was going until 8 o'clock. So she was supportive, but unable to leave her meeting at work.
Thank you.
It is now 7:23, and I don't have anyone else.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the public hearing has been closed. And so with that, I will open it up for any comment from my fellow commissioners.
Yeah, so a little context. I was part, I think, with Commissioner Miranda and staff to get that impervious surface ordinance in place. So some of it pains me to be like, let's bend right away after it's approved. The intent of it really is, for things that are new, but at the same time, we do have the opportunity to try to get things closer to a more responsible standard. So it's a little tough for me to support, but I do support this because it's a reduction and it's close, it's marginal, and there's a lot of things to consider, but the level of support and the 3 boxes it checks for supporting the variance, I support too.
Commissioner Miranda.
Yeah, I'll echo what Commissioner Bennett said, and also what the caller said, which is, it's a really awkward backyard. I don't know how else they would work with it. So, it seems like a reasonable compromise for this house.
Commissioner Alkire.
I just agree with Commissioner Miranda and Commissioner Bennett. Just one other thing I would mention would be, if the circumstances were slightly different, like if the driveway was coming out and going back in again, I might want the owner to work a little bit harder to knock a few more square feet off it by making the driveway 12 feet or 11 feet instead of 12 feet. Because the gap is only 250 square feet. So I think if in different circumstances, we could probably pare that down a bit more, but taking out a perfectly good driveway and replacing it is bad for the environment in many other different ways, so it probably doesn't make sense in this case. So I support this project.
I also think it would be a lot different if you had built the garage and then decided that it was maybe a little too funky. But I think that knowing that we were existing conditions for when you acquired the home definitely makes me supportive of this as well. Any other comments tonight? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve variance for impervious surface at 5916 Kellogg Avenue.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. This variance has been approved. Good luck. Okay, the next item is our site plan review for 4404 Valley View Road, and Director Teague will present tonight.
Okay, thank you, Chair, members of the Commission. Property is located in the Valley View Wooddale area. It's currently zoned Planned Commercial District 1, highlighted in red. It is within the boundaries of the small area plan that was done. You can see it's this site highlighted in yellow, has a 2-story height limitation on it. This graphic is from the small area plan, and it's just an example of what could happen on the site. As you can see in this box, so this is the site here, and it faces Oak Lawn, 2.5-story apartment shown here. Back in 2018, this site was approved as part of the Edina Flats development. What was to be constructed on the site here was a 4-unit condominium building with underground parking accessing off of Valley View Road. That development has not occurred, and so the applicant is a new builder here making a new request on the site. A conditional use permit was granted for that site that allows the housing, but the site plan has expired and so have the variances, so that's their request this evening. They did go through sketch plan, and this is a look at that plan that went before the Planning Commission and City Council. One of the things that was brought up at the sketch plan was, as noted in the small area plan, it suggested that the building on this site faces Oak Lawn, and that was some of the feedback that they did receive. In the sketch plan, as you can see here, there was an access off of Oak Lawn to access 3 of the units, with 1 off of Valley View Road, so they faced Valley View. So what they've done in their formal request here is they have turned 2 of those units that now face Oak Lawn. The result, however, is now the driveways face the street. So we've got pretty prominent driveways, again, that face Oak Lawn and Valley View. Here's a side-by-side comparison of what was approved for Edina Flats on the left and what is proposed this evening. So what's specifically requested is setback variance off of Oak Lawn, variances off of Valley View Road, and off of the north lot line. Another request that's made is in our commercial zoning districts, we talk about a requirement for brick or stone on the main level. They're proposing a hardy board siding here rather than brick. So again, I mentioned the site plan, again, coming off of Oak Lawn. One also item that comes up in the small area plan is the suggestion for a sculpture or some kind of a gateway entrance into this node. There's plenty of room on this site, and the city does have some monies available to do some type of sculpture as suggested in the small area plan on this site. So should this be approved, one of the conditions for approval would be for the applicant to work with the city to come up with that entrance statue on that site. Again, the proposed building materials is lap siding, and the applicant will go into more detail on that as well. One thing I want to back up. So this site, this was the old Burley hair salon that's been removed. Prior to that, it was a gas station, and there was a leak. Some of the feedback that came through on Better Together was in regard to the soils and conditions and MPCA review. Back in 2009, the property owner did clean the site, and MPCA has declared that the site is buildable. So that spill from that gas station has been cleaned up on the site. So just to quickly show some renderings, and again, the applicant will go through this in a little more detail. Off of Valley View, this is the view off of Oak Lawn. So this graphic shows a comparison between the city standard, the variances that were granted for Edina Flats, and what's proposed. So you can see here that they're very similar. On Oak Lawn, the structure is actually set further back than what was approved, from 16 feet to 20. Along Valley View, the setback proposed is 10 feet, which is generally what the approval was. There was a corner that was also 5 feet, a little bit closer. The setback to the north lot line is increased. It's proposed at 7 feet, and the variance that was granted previously was 5 feet. The structures granted, and as you can see in those side by side, there's more structure facing that north setback. In terms of density, so the density was calculated for the overall Edina Flats project. If this site were taken on its own, it still complies with the comprehensive plan. You could actually do 8 units per acre on this site, but again, it's a very small site with height limitations and setback restrictions as well. So the primary issue are the proposed variances justified. Staff does believe that they're reasonable for the site. Again, they're consistent with the Edina Flats. The buildable area is very limited. I'll show a graphic here in a minute that shows specifically, you can see how tight it is. The zoning ordinance also suggests that the city will consider variances for building closer to the street in exchange for a pedestrian-friendly type environment. So again, here's the buildable area outlined in red. So very limited on the site. That's the practical difficulty here. And in terms of the pedestrian-friendly environment, staff is suggesting, again, should this project be approved, that the existing walk that's shown here should be a boulevard-style sidewalk, so moved in on the site with green space separating the traffic from the sidewalk, and boulevard trees being planted in those areas as well. And that would go for Oak Lawn as well. So again, here's that side-by-side comparison. You can see the boulevard-style sidewalk was anticipated in the original Edina Flats. Practical difficulty, again, the size and shape of the lot. The right-of-way, there's actually quite a bit of room. This indicates the property line, so to the curb, there's quite a bit on Valley View and Oak Lawn. Whoop. So it's actually, the setback would be 23 feet from the curb on Valley View Road and would be 34 feet on Oak Lawn. The applicant the reason for the building material variance is they'd like it to blend in more with the residential homes surrounding it. And again, they'll go into more detail in their presentation on that. Again, brick and stone are required in commercial districts, they're not required in a single family zoning district. And again, we talked about the density. More units by the comprehensive plan could be allowed here, but 4 seems reasonable. So the staff recommendation is for approval, but we've outlined options for the Planning Commission to consider. An option for a denial and an option for approval. Some of the findings, I've gone through a lot of the findings that staff would be in support of, but the findings for denial could be that the site has been approved for a reasonable sized 4-unit condominium project already, so reasonable use could be utilized on the site. The variance criteria has not been met. The plans are not consistent with the building frontages that are suggested within the small area plan, and that the development's not consistent with the overall Edina Flats. If you have additional findings, you can certainly add them if that's the direction. But with that, staff is recommending approval subject to those findings and conditions that are outlined in the staff report. With that, I can stand for questions.
Thank you so much. And we will have a presentation from the applicant as well tonight.
Yes.
Okay. So do we have any questions then specifically for Director Teague prior to inviting our applicant up? Go ahead.
So regarding the gateway entrance, one thing you didn't clarify, but I think it's important for people to understand, when the city has monies, I mean, the developer would coordinate with the city, but the city would front the capital. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, yep, just want to be clear, thanks.
Any ruckus is all I want to hear. Because there's been nothing but ruckus on next door on that property. And people are just...
Yep. They have changed plans
Are we
multiple
able
times.
to mute the line coming in?
It's the party line.
May have never disconnected. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Strauss.
Carrie, Director Teague, perhaps you will be able to answer this. Would you say that the proposed overall height, how it compares to the Edina Flats project? I was just out there, and they would appear to be very similar, right? I mean, the height of what's being proposed here as to what was built for the Edina Flats?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the height of the taller building. Perhaps the applicant knows more detail, but I'm not exactly sure the heights of those buildings there.
Okay. I can wait on that one. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, I would love to invite the applicant up to make their presentation. Thank you.
It would be better if you put it on top of the document table. We have a camera above it, so then everybody can see it.
Where would that be? Right here.
Just let me know if you want it shown.
Okay. So let's advance.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Remick, owner of City Homes.
And I'm Jeff Zebarth. I live in Minnetonka Beach, Minnesota. First of all, thank you for your time this evening. And we know that this site has a lot of history to it, and so I'd like to try to bring a little bit of clarity to Planner Carey's explanation, because I think there's a lot of things to kind of consider here. One of them is that the planning that's been put in place regarding setbacks and so on for this site, this is sort of an anomaly of a site. As you can see, the setbacks and what it starts to do for buildable areas and things. So it's always been kind of a challenge. I superimposed the Edina Flats building onto this site so that we could see it in comparison. You can see that the footprint actually is pretty monolithic across the entire site, not a lot of green space. And as in comparison to what our proposal is, whoops. You can see in comparison that there's a lot more green space and sort of areas around the building. So that would be the first thing that I would sort of ask that people take a look at when you think of comparing what was approved in what we are proposing now, because we believe that the proposal now is actually a better solution from a number of standpoints regarding scale, setbacks. We are actually having more generous setbacks from the street than the previous proposal. And so I think there's some things that should be considered for that. And again, the buildable area, just for a number, it's 2,800 square feet. Basically, a single-family home with a garage could not fit on this site. So suddenly the anomaly part of this site is like, what can you really do with a reasonable use for it? And I think that what we're proposing makes a lot of sense.
I can't remember if it was here or the city council, but as I was talking with different members, trying to understand the best way to kind of come forward with this project, one of the things that I was told was that it was really important to get neighborhood feedback and the neighbors' feedback. So I sent around letters to the immediate, or I walked and put the letters, but to get the immediate feedback from the neighbors. We were there for probably a good hour talking with them, hearing a lot of what they had to say, different concerns that they had. I felt I was glad that I was given that opportunity, actually, so I could kind of talk through the project and the product and why I really believe in this product, and be able to express that there really is a huge need around Edina for this type of product. It's a missing product, and one that people are calling me constantly looking for. It is, I also firmly believe in producing products that will allow people to age in place. And these row homes are going to be set up for that process, or for that for this product and for those people. I'm not saying that everyone who buys it will need it right at the moment, but if they do, it will be set up that way with zero grade entry from the garage on the main floor into the house. They will have elevators. So it's going to be set up for people to be able to stay there and live there safely. We all know that one trip or fall can cause a lot of problems for people. I don't really care how old you are, so trying to make it better for them. So it's a product that I really believe in. I was able to express that to them. I also was able to hear some of their concerns And one of their big concerns, and I think there's a slide later, so if you'll just bear with me if I can. So one of the concerns that they had, and it was for this turn right here, if you can see my cursor, but from Valley View onto Oak Lawn, and then the people that live on the east side over here. In terms of, they were saying that it's kind of a very hard turn for traffic, and they're very concerned about people backing up onto that road from people entering off of Valley View and people exiting their homes that are on the east side. Is that making sense when I'm describing? Okay. So one thing that we talked about was, and that's why he was saying that the driveways kind of grew, is we were trying to have that back so they could back out of the garage, back out, and then go forward out into the street. And I'm glad, again, that I got that feedback and we could make it more safe for people. So that is one of the reasons why you see the driveway the way that it is. And then talking with the neighbor directly to the north, talking about the setbacks, talking about the orientation of the deck on that northeast unit too, and putting a screen wall up for her, talking about would it be better to move the deck to the other side, but then if we did that, it was going to cut off more of her light, and actually kind of looking at the light and seeing that having the lower end go over the deck instead of switching it or mirroring it was the better way to go. So we put up a screen on that deck and talked to her about that whole row of arborvitaes here. They also talked about wanting basswood trees, which you'll see labeled here on Oak Lawn, and the flowering that they do. There's 44 trees on this site. A lot of them are on Edina property, and I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to be able to plant more trees when I can, but we are trying to make this, and heard you as making this as a very desirable entry into Pamela Park or into that neighborhood. Another thing that we talked about was the materials on the outside of the homes. I'm happy to put brick on there or stone. That's fine. I just really firmly do not believe it's the right product for that neighborhood. I think it will stand out when we're trying to make it blend in with the neighborhood. I think all those homes, if we look on future sites in this presentation here, they all have Hardy. Do we have them in here? Yep. They all have Hardy on them. And yes, they have some stone accents, of course, no problem. And I think that can be beautiful and blend in as well. But if we take and we make them all stone or brick, they're going to stand out, in my opinion, and not blend with the neighborhood, which is one of the goals that we are trying to do. I talked about all of those.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
So I think moving on, a lot of this stuff is already covered, basically the challenge of the site being a PCD and commercial, and how do you make that work, and we just feel that more residential feeling is going to be something that's more transitional. The other thing I wanted to point out is that previous concept that was approved had a 90-foot long monolithic elevation along Oak Lawn. We've broken ours up, both in the massing and sort of the scale of that. There was also a 100-foot long monolithic wall on the north side of that project that was previously approved. So I think we've made a better solution for that. So I guess the point I want to leave here is that I believe that what we are proposing is a far better solution than what was previously approved. And sort of the key highlights, as Rebecca's mentioned, the aging in place place, I think, is a critical thing. And one thing I want to sort of point out is the landscape. There's a lot of money that's going to be spent on trees. We believe that the landscape can actually be the gateway part of this project, the way we would do if there has to be a sign or art that can be added to that. I think balancing these trees and creating the boulevard can all be worked with these number of trees that we're suggesting. And we also believe that the materials, as Rebecca mentioned, are much more in sort of consistency with the neighborhood and the scale that would be created with that, as well as sort of the massing that Rebecca had mentioned. And the last thing I want to just mention is that these units, there's a lot of sort of conversation that's happening. We're trying to create too much density. These are pretty efficient units. The first floor on the west building, the livable space is 840 square feet. That's not a large footprint. There's 2 stories for this this unit plus a lower level. So when you get the math, it ends up being around 2,700 square feet.
It also, if you look, the main floor is driving a lot of the footprint, because this is what, I mean, I would ask, what would you take out on this main floor for a main floor for people? And so the main floor kind of drives then the basement and the upper floor, but these are the pieces or the boxes, if you will, that people are wanting or needing on their main floor.
And then similar with the east building, a very compact plan. And in the imagery, again, this scale, purposely stepping down along Oak Lawn, stepping down on the north side of the massing for this unit, creating that screen wall. This is the elevation along Valley View, again, breaking it up and having some planting in between the 2 buildings. I guess the bottom line is we feel very confident in the scale of this, albeit not a single-family home. We just believe that the density and the scale that we've created here is a great transition between the sort of the commercial to the west of this, across the street with 44 project. And I guess we'd love to have your recommendation to carry this forward.
Do you want to see them?
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to
lift it up?
Nope, we can leave it right there.
I can point. So this would be, the other thing on the design, we purposely had a darker color on the upper level of it because we believe that's going to reduce the sort of the scale, the visual impact of it. So this is the gray hardy panel that we'd have a void in between boards that casts shadow, a darker shingle. We do a nice ipe type of wood on the screen wall, on the deck that's on the second levels, on the front doors. The hardy lap siding, we're looking at making it a little smaller reveal so it has a different scale to it. A lot of the larger commercial projects will have a larger reveal here. And in the black trim, which would be windows and doors and such. So this is sort of a real simple version of what the material board would be for the final product. And I guess we'll answer any questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Who would like to start? Commissioner Strauss.
Yes, thank you for your, perhaps if we go back to like a plan view of the lot.
The plan view on the lot, if at all possible, so we'll switch back to the...
Am I going the wrong way?
Yeah, there we go. Okay, yeah, that will work. I think it's clear. I mean, so on Oak Lawn, that sidewalk would continue to your property. I don't think there's an existing sidewalk beyond, but...
That's correct, and actually the previous plan that was approved did not have a boulevard sidewalk on Oak Lawn, so we are actually adding that back into the project.
And there will be one on Valley View.
Valley View as well.
Yeah. What I was struck just visiting the site was the amount of activity in that whole neighborhood, which I thought was just remarkable. I mean, and the reason with that sidewalk, I mean, people are walking dogs, bicycling, whatever. I mean, there's a lot of people. I thought the whole neighborhood looks terrific. It's got a lot of vitality going there. The other one, it would be the far southeast corner. Now, I know that's probably part of the public right away. There's a number of structures, utility boxes.
Yeah.
You know, are they going to be able to be somehow hit? I know what you do. I mean, but I was surprised it was like 4 or something like that.
I think that would be to be determined. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at our survey exactly what the utilities are. I think one's a transformer. I think there's some telephone switch gear. I mean, those are kinds of things that we can look at, because you also need to protect that when you're doing the building.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure.
Well.
Yeah, because your proposed art piece is actually
where that square is.
To the square is, right. So that's not even where this is. It's just sort of like, yeah, I mean, this is an opportunity to, I mean, it's not the most sightly corner right there currently. And
Yeah, and our idea would be to dress it up and fix it up and make it sightly.
yeah, good. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Alkire.
Thanks for the presentation. I just want to share a perspective with you and get your reaction to it, because I drive by this place quite a lot, and the first thing that I thought when I saw your proposal was I was surprised that you did not have the stone on the lower part of the building, at least. And the reason is, I mean, I've heard your narrative about wanting to fit in with the residential properties that are nearby. It makes total sense to me. But when I thought about it, I was thinking of this site and these buildings as principally part of the node along Valley View, the buildings along Valley View. And that if I wanted to make a connection between, to think of this as the Eastern Gateway, to think of these buildings as part of a group that's along Valley View, starting there and going to the west, that it would make more sense to me if they had the same sort of stone treatments as the new apartments, the daycare, the new buildings that are there to the west. To me, that would visually tie it together. So there's a trade-off there. You can't do both. So it's just, what's your reaction to that?
I mean,
thinking?
I'm again not opposed to it. I love Jeff's vision from an architectural standpoint of how he pulled all of these materials together. So just in general, I love the look of what he's produced from an elevation perspective. Again, if I'm being told we have to have the stone, I'll do it. I just really do love the architectural visual that we have put together, and I think it's the right way to go. But you could disagree. I mean, it's custom home building. Everybody has their own opinions about it. It's me personally. I like the look of it very much.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions before we open up our public hearing? Yes, please.
So I know you were talking about how this is supposed to be like a plan for the future. Did you guys consider adding solar panels on top of the buildings?
Yes, I am always wanting to do that if the people have the money to be able to do it. So what we're doing in a lot of our homes right now is roughing in and making it possible to add those solar panels at a later date, much like putting the electric vehicle chargers in. So I firmly believe in that product. It's just whether or not it is going to be cost prohibitive for the people that are buying it. But the majority, and it would be no different in here, that they would be set up to accept the solar panels.
Commissioner Miranda.
So actually, my question is half for Commissioner Teague and half for the applicant. We were just talking about impervious surfaces for single-family homes. And so these are not single-family homes, so they're not subject to the same regulations. So what are the regulations?
That's correct. We don't have an impervious surface requirement in our commercial zoning districts. might be something that we think about. We require the green space is obtained, through setbacks, those kind of things, but we don't have a hard and fast number.
But do we, there is an ordinance about having to process wastewater on site, or not wastewater, but rainwater on site, right?
Yes.
So would this be subject to that?
Yes.
It is, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And that has been submitted through our civil engineer, the best practice management for stormwater. The other thing I want to point out is, much like solar panels being planned, we are showing decks, but there's no reason that those decks could not be green roofs. Again, it's going to come down to the people that purchase these homes on what they actually want, if they want a green deck versus more of a usable deck. So there's other ways that we can continue to look at reducing the footprint of the whole impervious and things like that. So it could be a work in progress.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. I think we'll go to our public hearing, but I will definitely invite you back up if there are more questions. You can leave that up there for now. So we will now hear from residents who would like to provide testimony. To participate, call in now at 888-504-7949 and enter participant passcode 813740. Everyone is allowed up to 3 minutes to speak. Please give your full name and address, and Communications Director Jennifer Benarott will let anyone who calls in know if they have gone over 3 minutes. But first, we will start with anyone who is in person here to provide public testimony.
And I have images.
Oh, sure. Maybe we should remove that then. Oh, okay.
Or not.
Is it supposed to, which way does it face? I'm
Either way,
confused. Okay.
like use that as your target.
Okay.
And here's this.
When you're ready.
Okay, my name is Julie Risser. I live at 6112 Ashcraft Avenue. And if we could get my image projected, or is it? Okay. When this initial plan was approved, it was part of a larger process, and it involved comprehensive plan amendments, rezoning. It also involved the preliminary building plans, which included, before the vote, presentation of exterior materials, including stone and stucco. Before the vote, when this was first approved, October 3rd, 2017, before City Council, Councilmember Brundle asked if the project was a two-phase project. She was told by the developer it was, and that the first phase was the property to the east, 4404 Valley View Road. Obviously, it wasn't developed first. Brenda then followed up with another question. How can we get assurance that phase 2 is going to happen? That you don't end up doing phase 1 and not moving on to phase 2? She was told it's going to be in the sales contract with the city. And it's important to understand municipal land was part of the package deal. It was a single vote to approve the setbacks, to approve the preliminary building plans, and to approve the rezoning. My question, and I have several, is why isn't the sales contract in the information packet that you have? Why doesn't the public know what's in the sales contract? What does the sales contract stipulate? The other thing that I think is really important to understand is when the variances were approved, there were standards that were tied to them. And we have heard that the variances have shifted, but we have heard nothing about what those standards, those expectations were. And those expectations were to have a single access to each of the properties off of Valley View Road. Director Teague at the time said they all access off of Valley View Road. We wanted to avoid access off of Kellogg and Oak Lawn. Okay? He noted the variances are justified because the buildings could be placed in a way that did not require variances, but if that were to happen, the plans would have to have front-loaded garages, and we are trying to avoid that. And I want to underscore that it's not just that the plans are ignoring the stipulations, the standards that were, really expected with the first plan, but they are completely undermining them, all right? And the other thing that I want to talk about is safety, and this has to do with adding driveways onto the project. And I want to underscore that during the whole sketch plan presentation, the city staff report, as well as dialogue by appointed and elected officials, nobody asked about safety and adding another driveway. I'd also like to point out that in the Wooddale Valley View Small Area Plan that this parcel is part of, one of the problems is excessive driveways. All right, and I see them on stop already. Why were they not brought up? Why is the term conflict point not even part of it? Okay, I'm going to leave this package. Here, 1 was the original. Now we have 2. Now we have 3. Nobody's talking about that. The other thing is this is our gateway. It's kind of a symphony of garage doors. What is up with that? So I see I am out of time. I also want to leave you all with this. It's from Bloomberg. It's what happened to the pickup trucks. Cars have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's not getting any safer. Okay, and we need to take care of pedestrians. Sorry I ran over.
Thank you so much. I will invite anyone else here in person to provide testimony up.
Hello, Janie Weston, 6136 Brookview Avenue. I used to live for a few years at 6145 Oaklawn Avenue, directly across the street from the proposed project. So I know the corner really, really well. I know what it was like before the intersection of Oaklawn 62nd Street and Valley View Road was reconfigured. I was very sad to see that it was not turned into a cul-de-sac at 62nd Street. It would have made it much safer. So the current intersection still has, the reconfiguration created additional safety issues for pedestrians, cyclists, cars, trucks, everything. And I've seen, and I did hear, a cyclist get hit. Doesn't sound too good when a cyclist gets hit by a car right at that corner. So I have a question about, is the city going to make sure that the construction process is done safely, that construction equipment and supplies, materials being dropped at the site, that they do not ever impede or utilize the street right-of-way. And that's from where the utility boxes are over, to the south. That is not owned by the property owner. That is street right-of-way. It used to be 62nd Street and was changed to what it is now. It's important that the sight lines remain open during all the construction and that they not be impeded too drastically by what does get built on that site too. I am concerned about the utility boxes getting bumped into. There are major power lines, fiber optic, phone lines, everything goes through right there. I saw it get buried. And I don't know what to do about those utility boxes. They're not real pretty, but they're really practical and they're very necessary. So we'll see where that goes. They're not pretty, I know. I would like to see stone used on the buildings somewhere, somehow. I'm a stone person. I love stone. I'd love to see a stone sculpture out there on that corner, too. That's what I'm partial to. Also, one other thing. I'd like to see the pitch of the roof, all the peaked roofs on this. They're quite steep right now. That is not necessary. I'm going to play the architect a little bit here. I'd like to see them be more, less of an angle, steep angle. It causes less visual blocking of sunlight for the neighbor to the north, to the neighbors across the street. It also makes it easier if someone wants to put solar panels up on that roof, on all those different roofs. That's one thing that could be an easy, simple change for the design of these buildings for less visual impact. So, anyway, that's my say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in person tonight? Yes, please.
Hello? No? Oh, is it working? I think so. Okay. My name is Rita Paris. I live at 6020 Fairfax Avenue, and I was a member of the original Wooddale Valley View Area Planning Committee that Carrie was part of. I walk by this location at least 5 times a week on my daily neighborhood walk. And I've been trying to size this lot up with all of its staking that's happened to try to figure out how things are going to look, how they size up, et cetera. Still can't figure it out, but I get a better idea by seeing these drawings here. I have a couple of questions that you can answer once I'm done. I guess the one question is, I never understood why the original Edina Flats that was approved for that site never got built. So I'd like to simply know why that didn't happen. Another question, will this complex be part of the Edina Flats Association, or will this be a separate association? How will these buildings be managed? As townhouses, as side-by-side homes, will there be something that addresses how the exterior maintenance of the homes and grounds will be addressed so that there is ongoing maintenance and attractive appearance of this property in the years ahead? That isn't true of some others that we see along Valley View right now. I do agree with this lady that I think the city and the developer need to give serious consideration in an ongoing way as to how the construction will be handled so that there is minimal congestion of highways, of streets, et cetera, because those of us who live in the area weren't sure from day to day what to expect of the construction of the larger building across the way. My impression was you said you met for comment with residents on Oaklawn itself? On Oaklawn itself. So a lot of the comments you came up with were from those people. Correct. Is that correct? Okay, and if they seem to be comfortable in general with the final proposal, and it's on their block, on their street, and I'm 3 blocks away, then I'd say I'd be comfortable with it too. I do have just a couple of thoughts on the aesthetics. I like this layout better than the 4 you had fronting Valley View before. But in keeping with this lady on the pitched roof, I have a thought on the pitched roof part 2. On the other, as well as on these, I feel like my mother had this saying when she was visiting in northern Italy in the Alps. She said, if I looked up, I was so high, I felt if I reached up, I could touch heaven. And I feel that same way about this roof pitch. So if you might do something to tone down what looks high, and I don't know if it has to be the pitch of the roof as much as maybe some horizontal shakes in the very peak of the pitch that will bring it down a little bit. That's the only thing, because between that and the dark color on top and others, it looks top heavy in some ways. So from an aesthetic point of view, I might say, could you look closely at the color combinations of the darks and the lights, the top heavy, the final product, etc.
And I think we did get the light working again, so you're up on time if you want to just wrap up your final thoughts.
Okay. And I think that was about it. But I will simply say I looked at this one in the previous plan you had, and I do prefer the look of this one. I think it blends better as a residential property rather than a commercial property, which the other properties, not the one preceding, but the condo-type buildings looked more commercial. This looks more residential. I think it'll blend much nicer.
Thank you. Any other public testimony here in person tonight? All right. Seeing none, I will look to our phone lines. Do we have any callers in tonight?
We do not have anyone at this time. It's 8:15. I would recommend we wait a minute or so before moving on, since there is a slight delay in the broadcast. I will come back to you at 8:16 or when I have a caller, whichever's first.
Thank you.
It is now 8:16, so I think it's safe for you to move forward with the agenda.
Thank you. Can I have a motion
Move to close the public hearing.
Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The public hearing is closed, and I will now open it up to commissioners for questions, and I will go directly to Commissioner Bennett.
I have more comments. Is that okay? Okay. So in short, I support this. Is it ideal, and does it hit every point? No. Give this site 30 feet to the north, and then it could. It's such a constrained site, and to me, the perfect scenario is having, all of the driveway and parking hidden behind the buildings. We just can't really facilitate that well. I preferred the previous plan a little more than this. I still support this one, but I want to go back to the small area plan, because we've gone back. There's 3 curb cuts, so there's 2, there's 1. A lot of times we're talking about sites, and there's guidance that is out there for us from the beginning. That's a product of a lot of people's work and research into developing the future vision for this area. So this site is one of the few in small area plans that is specifically addressed. Not all small area plans call out a specific site. This one does. So this is called the Eastern Gateway. There's 4 main points that it talks about. The first is orientation, and it expands upon, if this is to remain commercial use, it should face Valley View. If it's residential, then it ought to face either or and. So either it could face south and east, or either or. The other part is the gentle transition to the neighborhood from the node. So this site was perceived not to necessarily be a continuation of the commercial vibe, but more of the end cap to the residential block, because it's by itself. And so what it talks about specifically is there should be landscaping, screening, and building height should be designed to help the building serve as an end cap to that block. And if, from what I heard tonight, there's been a lot of specific tailoring toward the screening to the neighbors of the north. The Gateway Public Art is the third component. We've talked about that, and I'll finish on that. The last part is the architectural vernacular. The plan specifically says it does not attempt to prescribe the style or vernacular of the building, that is, the exterior materials, window proportions, or detailing. Only the height and relationship of the building to the street are specified. So even though we've approved things in the past that might have a different vibe, getting back to like the vision for this is really the size and scale of that building and how it is a gentle transition to more height and density as you get into the node. So I think this is an appropriate proposal, being 4 units and kind of a blend of row houses, and now instead of facing one direction, it's facing both. It brings a little more variety and versatility. The one condition I would support and will support is a boulevard style sidewalk on Valley View. And then second, the Gateway Public Art, I would be okay. Part of the plan talks about how it should, be a gateway also from Oaklawn, and Oaklawn's not really a through street to me. Like, if you're coming to Valley View, Wooddale, like you're going down Valley View, and that should be the prominent direction that faces. And so where to locate that, to me, could come more toward that more oblong corner, closer to the sidewalk, instead of tucked back toward the houses by the transformer boxes. I think it should just signal that to users that are biking or driving here in this area, and then you could line it with trees and landscaping behind it to screen the homes a little better. But those are my comments, but that's where I stand. Thanks.
Thank you for your presentation. I agree with the developer that we need more homes like this in Edina. We need more row homes, infill housing, and I'd actually like to see more homes like this scattered throughout the city, not just sort of nestled into the area where we allow duplexes and triplexes. I think it adds for more diverse communities. I also agree and would support this project with the addition of the boulevard on the sidewalks. Having a giant Siberian Husky that I walk all year round, not having that boulevard, especially in the winter, is really important. I do have a question, and I'm not an engineer, so I'm not going to try to be an engineer. I like the comments about having sort of the garages right off the. Is there a reason why you couldn't go underground and have so you have the main floor, like flip-flop what's the basement with the garage, so you could flip them around. So
yeah, it would just be from a.
Could you come up to the mic, please?
You can just go ahead. The steepness of the driveway going down, I think, would be very dangerous, and then in terms of snow and everything that happens there, I don't think it's
I'm
the
not
right
an
move.
engineer, so like angles and things confuse me. So that would just be my otherwise I'm in support of this project. Commissioner Strauss.
Yes, I don't really have, Commissioner Bennett really summarized my own position on this. I just wanted to make a comment. I did read the Better Together notices. There were 9 or 10 or 12, 11, thank you. And I was also familiar with a number of the names who submitted, people who were part of the Valley View Small Area Plan Task Force, and I was somewhat, not alarmed, but taken back by some of their comments about summarizing they thought of was the excessive request for variances for this project. And I have a lot of respect for these people who submitted this information. But hearing the presentation, I was impressed that there did seem to be a greater and a more enhanced green space, for the buildings. I supported the previous project. I do believe this is a better layout. But I think it's clear the staff themselves, obviously were clear that they could see both ways and the amount of feedback. But I think, sort of like Commissioner Bennett said, this does check most of the boxes, and I think it should move forward. What was the last? Okay, I guess we'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Let me know if you think of it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did. It came up, and that was, I think, an important part, that pitch of that roof. If there was one architectural change that could bring this, really to be more acceptable, that would be it. And a number of people have mentioned it, but I'm not sure what your options are there. But I thought that was a very good point.
Commissioner Alkire.
Just to pile on a bit from most of the comments that we've heard already tonight, I support this project. Like Commissioner Strauss, I took some time because there was so much feedback about the small area plan. In the comments that we got on Better Together, I pulled out the documents that Commissioner Bennett was looking at, just because I wasn't around at the time that plan was done. And in my reading, this project is highly consistent with the small area plan for this area, impressively so, I think. And I mean, that's the main reason for supporting it, I think, is it really fits what the neighborhood said they wanted to do 8 years ago, if that's however long ago it was. Not a huge fan of the garages, but frankly, don't know what else to do with the cars. I share the concern of some folks about the driveways on Oak Lawn and on Valley View. But on the other hand, if you look at the satellite map of this area, there's driveways everywhere. I mean, I don't see this as creating an incremental danger. It doesn't. Every time you add another driveway, of course, it is incremental, but it doesn't change the traffic situation on either street. It's just consistent with the way the thing has developed in the past. I was originally concerned about the not having the stone, but I don't hear any other commissioners getting too cranked up about it, so we'll just let that one go for the moment. And finally, for me personally, I don't have a great need for a sculpture or some big artistic statement. For me, a nicely done sign that said "Welcome to" whatever this is properly called would be ideal, and probably a lot less likely to draw criticism, because art is always a challenge, but a beautifully done sign that says "Welcome to our neighborhood" seems like you can't go wrong. So that's my 2 cents on this. Thanks for the presentation. I thought the buildings look wonderful.
So I'll start off by saying the density is fine. I mean, it's within the standards, and I think it fits fine within the neighborhood. I understand that that underground parking is infeasible, either because of finances or engineering. But I do feel, as Commissioner Bennett has said, the previous proposal did handle this in a much better way. Clearly, the size and shape of the property requires some variances. The buildable area is just not viable. But I think the larger the variance, the better the project should be, and I don't really feel this is a great project. So I'm just really disappointed in the driveways, just being expanded so much, both the number of driveways and the width of the driveways, and including turnarounds. And then seeing, 4 giant garages from the street. And so, if you look at the small area plan and you look at, kind of as Commissioner Bennett said, an end cap, they had an example of a building that they said, you don't have to build this building. But it was row homes with stoops and obvious front doors and something where cars were not present. Cars either came in from behind or was underground parking, I forget which. And I think that's the idea that they were getting to in the small area plan. And I don't see this being that way at all. In fact, we talk about, there's a lot of talk about the art, and this is being the gateway to the neighborhood, and it looks like a bunch of single-family homes. And so I don't understand why you would have art in front of what looks like the single-family home part of the neighborhood when it's not a transition yet. There's nothing here that looks anything like an apartment building or, row homes or anything. These look like duplexes with huge driveways and huge garages in front. So I'm not really getting that. There were some comments that it looks too commercial, or you don't want it to look too commercial. I'll remind people that this replaces a commercial building on the site, so that was there from time immemorial. So I don't think looking too commercial would be a problem here. Obviously, the scale, we don't want this to be a 3 or 4 story building, and it's not, so that's good. And I agree with other commissioners that the sidewalk and the city and the staff, that the sidewalk should not be against the curb, and it really needs to have a boulevard there. In general, I feel like this should be, and I mentioned this at the sketch plan. This should have more space for people and less space for cars. I mean, it's so car oriented, it really doesn't look anything different than the houses that surround it. And we have, the city's been pushing for the E-Line BRT less than half a mile away. In fact, there's a major stop that'll be less than half a mile away, right at 62nd Street and France Avenue. And so, if anything, I feel that this should have, if not all the residences, then maybe half of them should have 1 parking garage instead of 2. And we've got a multi-use path that goes straight from this property to the transit line. So this feels like a failed opportunity, I think, if we approve this. So I preferred the previous plan and the sketch plan, actually. And this plan, I feel that it's just a huge disappointment to me. I just don't think the scale in terms of density is fine, but in terms of the street presence and what the small area plan wanted and what we expect in a transition, I think we need a better understanding of what a transition is here, because I don't think this is it. This is not a transition. So I'm going to vote against this. Thank you.
Would you like to?
I hear what Commissioner Miranda is saying about the driveways. It's obviously not ideal to have massive concrete blocks, but I understand that it's for the safety of the residents, because as like a new driver, I don't want to be backing out onto a busy road. Like, that is terrifying to me. So I would like to be able to turn around. And then I also like how it's looking towards the future, because we do need to be thinking about that with all of our projects, and that's what we're trying to do. So I appreciate that it is helping people to be able to stay in their homes for longer. And I like this change better than the previous plan, because I think it's a better transition between the commercial and the residential, because it separates them easier, so you can tell that there's a difference instead of it just being a wall and a driveway.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I echo a lot of fellow commissioners' thoughts. What sticks out to me is the number of garages. And I went back and listened to the March 9th meeting, I think is when we had the sketch plan for this. And I remember that suggestion that you had made, Commissioner Miranda, of one stall for at least half of these. And I thought you offered some really creative suggestions too about density, because I am really supportive of density, especially in this transition area. And I just feel that now it feels like there's garages. And I too really liked the previous proposal that we had. And even going back then, and I know that we didn't say that you had to build exactly what was in that small area plan, but seeing that imagery of the stoops, and I think, Commissioner Strauss, what you were saying of how active this community is, the idea of having more of that front lawn area with the stoops and more of that engagement to that community node, that community area, I think is lacking. It doesn't feel connected. It feels like garages. And then I think additionally, the variances are obviously what we're considering here tonight. And I think that variances should be granted. And obviously with the Edina Flats, we did grant those variances. But variances should be to improve on what is there today or what is possible today. And I don't see this being an improvement other than the increase in density, which I do think is great. But other than that, I don't see a large improvement against building a single family home there, which I know it would be tight, but a 2,800 square foot is a reasonable single family home, right? So I do think that there would be something that could be built in that area. But again, I'm comfortable with variances given the configuration of this, if it really improves on that area. And having seen what we just reviewed in the sketch plan, like that spoke to me in a much better way, because it hid the parking. It didn't feel as car focused. And now here I walk past this site on a weekly basis as well. I think about, the width of that driveway, and especially if now we do add that boulevard, I'm even concerned that there's going to be enough space, because especially pulling out onto Valley View, you might want that area to turn around. And if you add the boulevard, now that sidewalk is really cutting into a lot of that driveway area that's on that site. So I don't think that this is working for me. And I won't be supporting this either. Are there any other comments?
Ready for a motion?
Sure.
I move for approval of for the variances requested at B2213 for 5916 Kellogg.
The other one, the 4404.
That might help, huh? Okay, for 44. So I move that we approve the site plan review for 4404 Valley View Road.
Do you want to include any of the staff findings or any of the additional?
Yes, and subject to the staff findings as outlined.
Great, thank you. Second.
I'll second. Ooh, somebody got it. Good.
Okay.
Any additional, I was kind of looking at Commissioner Bennett, because there had been something that you had mentioned of, I think it was about the boulevards, of wanting to include that.
Yeah, I guess just to have the findings and conditions in the staff report, because the staff report has that as a condition.
That's fine.
Thank you for confirming that.
Yeah.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Nay? Nay. All right, so a vote of 2 to 4 is what I counted, and That would be 4 in favor and 2 opposed. So this is approved for tonight. Thank you. I'll just wait a minute because I know we have some materials to clean up. All right, next on our agenda tonight is the preliminary rezoning and preliminary development plan for the 4600 and 4620 77th Street West. And tonight, Director T will be presenting. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Chair, members of the commission. So, it sounds like this is working, but.
We're not seeing your screen, so maybe that's...
Oh, okay. These are working. Oh, exhibit. Should we just show it then? Yeah. Thanks. We're good? Oh, okay. Okay, so this property is located in the Pentagon Park, the north side of 77th, just south of Fred Richards Park. It's currently zoned MDD6 Mixed Development District, and it's guided in a comprehensive plan for office residential, which allows up to 75 units an acre. This would be phase 2 of what's going to be known as the Fred Apartments that are currently under construction. So they did go through sketch plan. This is the building that's under construction, and the sketch plan again was for the phase 2, the building to the east. What the proposal specifically is to construct a 7-story, 276-unit apartment. 10% of the units within the project would be for affordable housing at 50% AMI. The remainder of the units, though not classified as affordable under Met Council standards, but they are between 70 and 120% AMI, which is one of those missing, not necessarily missing middle in the physical sense, but in the cost of housing. So a couple of renderings, and the applicant will go through in more detail. So you can see the building currently under construction. It would tie in, the sidewalk will be built as part of that phase 1. Apartments would tie in, and again, providing connections to the Fred Richards Park. A Wooner-style entrance on the east side of the building. This would be a one-way traffic in. They're proposing a cafe on the corner. Here's an overview of the site. So the site we're looking at is outlined here. There's 2 office buildings on the site today. One would be removed and one would remain. So that last image was of this entrance here. One of the main features of this project is providing a new access to Fred Richards Park, and that would be located east of that existing building. This would be a dedicated easement to the city to provide that access. It would replace that east-west access on the north side of the existing buildings. It's kind of hidden, so a much more prominent access to the park. Just a quick rendering of what that might look like. The applicant has a much better view of this to show you, so we'll just quickly move past that. They've made a number of revisions since the sketch plan. Again, they've added that cafe. They talked about potentially having some retail on there, but it's definitely in the plan this time. Created that north-south Wooner to provide a better pedestrian experience, increased the landscaping all around, changed the shape of the building, reduced some of the square footage, reduced the parking slightly. So this request requires a rezoning from that MDD6 to a PUD 23. So that's the zoning that was established for the project to the west. So it would just be an expansion of that to include this site. So quickly, again, going through the site plan. Entrance into the apartments on the east side of the building here. Again, this is a one-way. So in leaving the site, they would go access that new entrance to the park. Again, landscaping all around, additional connections, pedestrian connection to the park, and the vehicular connection to the park as well. Boulevard-style sidewalks along the street, be a continuation from the project again to the west. In terms of code compliance, it would be in compliance with the PUD 23 standards that were set up for the property next door. The one varying aspect of this is in regard to height. The building height overlay district on this site is 4 stories, 48 feet. Again, this would be similar to the building that's under construction, 5 to 7 stories. Again, consistent with the PUD. The density for the site is 51 units an acre. Again, because of that office building that is remaining on the site. So primary issue is the proposal reasonable to justify the PUD expansion? We believe, staff does believe that it is justified here. Again, this would be considered phase 2 of the project under construction. They would meet all of the performance standards that are already set up in the PUD 23 district. And we believe that it meets the PUD criteria. Again, the site is zoned for office residential use, residential being allowed. This project does provide the affordable housing. It'd be 28 units within the project. The project next door did the buy-in. So it's good to introduce affordable housing actually in the project. Again, that significant upgrade with the connection to Fred Richards Park and the expansion of all of the sidewalks and connections all around the site. The existing roadways will support the project. Stantec did a continuation of their, Stantec is the old Wank. They've merged together, so that's the name is different, but it's the same firm that's been doing all these reviews in this area. Concluded that the existing roadways can support the project. In regard to the height, we have that provision in the code that talks about buildings that are 7 stories tall need to maintain a setback 4 times the height of the building. So this graphic will demonstrate that. So based on the height of the building, a 308-foot setback is required to the nearest R1 property. And that setback is over 700 feet, so it's well within that setback that's established. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the expansion of the PUD, subject to the findings and conditions that are outlined in your staff report. With that, I can stand for questions, and the applicant is here for a presentation as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Director Teague. What questions do we have for him before inviting the applicant up? Commissioner Alkire.
Yeah, I do have one, Director Teague. So with the building that's under construction and this one that's proposed, we'll have a very nice sidewalk for a certain amount of feet along the north side of 77th. But if I'm remembering it correctly, it will end just west of the building that is under construction now. So whose problem is that? Is that something the city can do something about? Or is that the landowner to the west there, who I'm not sure who that is? Is that the insurance company?
Yeah, so the boulevard sidewalk would continue through this property and basically end at the new entrance into the park. So it would be extended as the properties to the east would develop, unless the city were to go in and put that in ourselves.
Right.
So we're getting there, not complete yet.
Yeah, we're getting closer. That's for sure. Thank you.
Commissioner Bennett.
Can you speak to how specifically the new public street vehicular connection ties into this? Just
this one right here?
Yeah.
Yep, so it'll provide, again, access to the park. So there'll be a public easement over it, providing that access. It's also an opportunity to access the existing buildings, office buildings to the east, as well as the existing building here to the west. And residents could well, yeah, it would be a two-way. So residents of the new building would have 2 ways in. They could come in off of this one-way street and enter, or they could enter this access and come through here and into the building.
Okay. But that specifically is on the table as part of this decision, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, this new access and the existing office building, this would be part of the rezoning district. So all of this is under consideration, yes.
So does the developer own that piece where the existing building is, or who owns that? And are they okay with whoever owns it, residents kind of cutting through what that parking lot would be? If you know what I'm talking about.
Are you talking about the access here? The new access? I'm not sure if you're seeing.
We're not seeing it again.
Oh.
So the parcel with the existing building and the new sidewalk, who owns that tract of land? Is that the current developer, or is that someone else?
That is the current property owner will continue to maintain ownership of that parcel. The apartment developer will purchase just the apartment piece of it.
Will there be any issue with the current owner of this kind of existing building, people accessing and crossing through their parking lot there? Do you know what I'm saying at the top?
I do, yes, yeah. And the property owners are represented in the audience, and they've been along for the ride, so to speak. And so, yeah, there will be shared access agreements between all of the parcels, yeah.
All right, seeing no further questions, we will invite the applicant up to make their presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. Can you guys hear me okay? Thank you for staying late on a beautiful summer evening. My name is Kurt Gunsbury. I'm the CEO of Solheim Companies. I'm presenting with my business partner, Jason Lord, and Craig Hartman, the Craigulator, principal of Momentum Design Group. You guys, several of you met us in sketch plan already and had a number of questions, which we'd like to address real quickly, and then jump to other aspects of our presentation. And feel free to interrupt if you have any questions along the way. You probably read the summary from Mick Johnson. Just wanted to address his concerns directly. We have activated the west side of the Woernerf in the ways that he requested. We now have 2 entries to the building instead of 2 primary entrances for residents. One is into a mailroom area, and then the other is into the park side at the north end of the Woernerf. We've activated, we're hoping to activate the east side of the Woernerf as well, with participation from Hillcrest, who owns that building. We have added a cafe on 77th, at the corner of 77th and our new access road, our Woernerf, to draw people into the park and also to create a welcoming environment along 77th. If any of you are familiar with 77th, it's a pretty desolate highway right now. So this will help change the atmosphere of that street. Commissioner Alkire, you specifically asked about garage access at our last meeting, and we've streamlined this into a one-way. There's only one entrance door into the garage, and as Carrie pointed out, there are 2 ways to get to that entrance door, including a way that doesn't go through the Woernerf. So it's really made it much safer for the Woernerf area. We also we are no longer going around the building, through the building and around like we had originally presented. Let's see, what else had you asked? I think that was our primary concern that we were addressing from you. And then Commissioner Olson, we lowered the grades, and by doing so, we were able to improve the sightlines directly into the park. And that was a big concern. Wait, Commissioner Joanne Olson isn't here tonight, right? Okay, sorry. Wrong Olson, sorry. Anyway, we were basically, by lowering that hill, you can see directly into the park now. And as you saw from the aerials, it's actually really beautiful. There are like a dozen wetlands in the park that they're planning, City of Edina Parks is planning to open up long term. And you'll be able to see straight into the park through the Woernerf, which is really cool. Right now, you just see this giant cracked asphalt parking lot. Let's see, Commissioner Strauss, let's see, we were challenged by wayfinding, and we remain challenged by wayfinding, and that was one of your main concerns. We do think that the one-way helps with the wayfinding a lot, and also for cars to have these 2 entrance points also helps. But It's going to continue to be a challenge with signage and other things like that, and that's something we're going to have to work on both with the existing neighboring landowner, which is Hillcrest, and coordinating with our property to the west to make sure that we have good signage and wayfinding throughout the site. But I'll just say right now, it's still a challenge. We're not there yet. We're playing with a lot of grades, playing with the water table, working with the 9 Mile Creek watershed district to figure out all that stuff. But we are working on it, so I just want to reassure you of that. Let's see. And then Jason's actually going to talk a little bit more about signage when he presents. And Commissioner Miranda, let's see. We worked hard to make all the connections to the park primary, so they really do feel primary. Specifically on the west side, the bike path got far wider. It's really now like a giant garden that you're going through, which is really cool. And by taking the street away from that area, the vehicular part of that, it really is wonderful. I think it feels like an extension of the park between the two buildings. So hopefully we addressed your concern on that. Then the Woonurf itself, it's really becoming more actualized than what we originally presented to you, and all of your concerns I think were very real. Is this really a Woonurf, or is it just for cars? I think time will tell. Part of it is how well we work with Hillcrest on their building. They've come up with a lot of really creative ideas to basically move different tenants into the first and second floors of their building. That could be restaurant tenants, could be retail tenants. Now that we're adding 1,000 people to this neighborhood of Edina, there's actually a lot of demand for these types of services, and it'll really help activate all of Pentagon Park and Pentagon Village to the south. And then let's see, Commissioner Agnew, we decoupled the parking from the units as you requested, and it's all buried underground. You don't see it at all, which is, and we think there's plenty of parking there. We also added the cafe, as you already probably noticed, to draw people. And as I commented to Commissioner Miranda, we're working actively with Hillcrest to see what other active uses we can bring to the area that bring in not just office tenants, but retail, commercial, restaurant, coffee, etc. Let's see. If we missed any of your concerns along the way here, please let us know. And again, feel free to interject with questions. And otherwise, I'm going to hand off to Jason.
Thank you, commissioners, and good evening. Thanks, Kurt. Big picture in this, we're really creating a little village along 77th and connecting to the park. I think it's a great opportunity for 3 neighbors to all work together to really create something great. And that's us doing the apartment development, that's the existing office owner, and that's the Edina Parks Department as well. And so we've really come at this of how can 3 different adjacent groups come together and create access and merge the park to 77th Street. And the big philosophy, like we mentioned in sketch plan, was the idea of a network of access for different speeds and different users. We have the 10-mile-an-hour bike path access. We're designing the Woonurf to be a really active public space for 5-mile-an-hour strolling, have a break at the cafe, could be 1-mile-an-hour strolling on the Woonurf. And we've activated both sides of that. I know that was a concern at sketch plan as well, by moving amenities and a secondary entrance along the intersection of the Woonurf to the park, so that we'll have eyes on that public space and really activate that for as much as the day as we can, and blend really well with the office building adjacent to that. And then our 20-mile-an-hour access is the new park access road that will be developed between a couple of the office buildings to the east of the site. And that philosophy really guided us within the development as well, to create paths around so it does feel like a village, and even led into the architectural design of different elements, different wings, so we break up the mass of what is a large building, but we want it to appear like a village, and a village with trails between it, and a village that blends 77th into the park. And we do have an adjusted rendering of the park access. I'm not sure how to work the...
You can just set it right on that main.
And it's just a concept, so I want to just be very clear. It's going to take lots of working together with the Parks Department and the city for signage, wayfinding, and different committees as well. So it's really a collaborative process, but we just want to present the concepts of what this access could be. It is related to this project, as Carrie said. And maybe, Carrie, you could comment more. But.
I'm going to interrupt because we can't see it yet.
I don't have control out here anymore, so I'm waiting for the AV staff to respond. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No,
I just really wanted to see what you were talking about.
So it is a concept. We don't have this designed or engineered yet. And we'll have to work with, city commissions. I'm sure there'll be arts commissions for wayfinding and the Parks Commission as well. But, that and the WUNRF as well, we're really approaching as a collaboration between all those adjacent landowners. And with that, I'll hand it over to Craig to talk about the building.
Commissioners, thank you. As the architect of the building tonight, I kind of feel like I'm playing second fiddle a little bit, but that's okay. When we have an amenity like Fred Richards Park behind us, my job was to, extend the ideas that were set up in phase one, as far as the paths around the building, but specifically for us, it was sort of that east-west connection that's mid-building, and that speaks to the idea of the village concept, and that we want people to feel welcome to actually navigate through east-west in a mid-block, not mid-block, but mid-project perspective. So I think from our standpoint, it was to facilitate that sort of porous nature. I continue to look at it from that standpoint of, we want what is a large project to allow people to move through it, both north to south, but then, like I say, east to west. In general, the exterior palette is it's fairly muted, and the goal there is to transition from phase one on our west. We've got the existing office buildings on our east, but then I think more specifically, to provide accents, the timber accents that we've set up sort of at the street level. That's where the presence is. Nobody's experiencing the 7th floor. They're experiencing that first floor, and so it's the idea that we wanted to bring in those timber accents to sort of accentuate entrances, accentuate the cafe, the various amenities that we have around. Our bike repair facility on the west side. Along the bike trail. I said the cafe, our entrance, but then it plays into sort of the WUNRF as we move from south to north. Actually, on the northeast side, where the WUNRF continues on, we've got more common space back there, and again, another timber element to sort of identify that piece, just to sort of draw you in. So not only do you sort of experience the pavers and the signage at the very beginning, but then as you progress through, now you see that secondary timber element towards the north end, leads you into the park. So that's kind of, from a building standpoint, that was our goal, is to just facilitate that movement through the site. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Are you ready for questions? I'm sure there are some. Yes, Commissioner Strauss.
Mr. Gunsbury, I'd just like to compliment you and your team. This is a spectacular presentation, and I think it's what I'm most impressed with is the process that, as we've talked about what we wanted to see, you've obviously listened, and more than just listened, acted, and I mean, we've been looking at this site for pretty much my whole time on the commission here, and it's really, I mean, I love it. This plan is really happening, and it's really taking shape. And what I'm seeing with that WUNRF just sort of looks like an exciting place that you're going to want to be. I mean, and like I said, the Fred is a wonderful resource, and I think this really blends with that the two. So I'm excited with what you guys have presented. So thank you.
Commissioner Bennett.
So I might have missed it still. So how is the new vehicle access coupled with this, just with what you guys are doing? I mean, there's just different entities on those drawings. So who's responsible for that? And is that part of tonight's decision?
It is. The developer would be constructing that road. It's part of the give to get. We really, the city would like a much better and prominent entrance
And so that
into
is
Fred
that's
Richards Park.
owned by the city, though?
We would hold an easement over it for
With
permanent
Hillcrest in
access.
between,
Yes.
basically.
Yep.
Okay. Because to me, that seems very different than the majority of what you're focusing on, and the Woonerf. There's a level of excitement and energy and activity, and that just reminds me of what used to be there, of like, you'd only know about that Fred Richards golf course if someone led you to it. You know, it's just this basic alley. And from Mick Johnson's comments about like extending the park, kind of like what you've done between the buildings, that is what I would expect. And I guess the question is, why isn't it a little more enhanced?
The main reason, Commissioner Bennett,
Yeah.
it's really only 23 feet wide.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, and we have to preserve all the parking for the existing office use. So it's very much, we've been making sausage with Carrie for 6 months now, just to get that. And I hate to say that, we're under-delivering on that, but it's an amazing delivery to even get it there. So I think you just got to celebrate the fact that there is a vehicular access, and we're going to do our best to enhance it with sculpture or other items. We're playing with budget on that. But it is going to be a relatively narrow passageway, and there is an emphasis, because it's cars, on making sure it's a safe vehicular passageway, which means we need a full width lane for each direction.
Yeah, no, I
Great
understand.
question. I'll go with you.
Yeah, no, and that's just what, we always have constraints, and it's like, I'd rather not even have that part of what we're deciding tonight until it's right and better. We've had other decisions in the past with different linkages and connections, and some of them have been tabled, and I don't agree with that. This one is just, it's a bummer. Yeah.
And just to add on to that, maybe Carrie could chime in, but I don't think it's the design of the park access road that's really on, because the concept of where the road goes, but in terms of wayfinding, signage, what it looks like, landscaping, I think all that is to be determined in collaboration with adjacent landowners and the Parks Department in the future. So we're just not all the way there yet on that collaborative piece.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, from my experience, if we're not committed to certain elements, then this is likely what will just unfold indefinitely, and that's what I fear, is like, it's this alley through an office parking lot, and it's, you would rather drive down the Woonerf to get into the park, honestly, just for that experience.
It is part of why that was upgraded.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just, I get it. You're up against it. The other question I have, the one comment of Mick's that I resonate most with is kind of that east side, or the east side of the building, just continuing a more active use throughout it. And I understand the tension of, it's a desolate area now, so the cafe makes sense there on the corner. But I think as we could imagine the future, and there being more activity in the park and more people coming to the park through that access point, having more activity toward that rear side. And I know you have some spaces indicated there, but those kind of seem a little more private. Can you speak to those? Are those private, or are they more geared to anyone who's there?
No, those are private. They're geared toward other common areas for
Yeah.
the residents of the building. They'll include a swimming pool. I'm sorry. Yep. Those are common areas for the residents. They'll include a swimming pool, different kind of amenity spaces, all that kind of focus into the park. Similar to the way that we played with Fred Phase 1. So,
But
go ahead,
with that,
Jason.
we did take on a lot of the ideas of blending the park and amenities to that. So we do have a covered area off the amenity space, that would flow. On Phase 1, we had a wider courtyard that we could flow into the park as a gradient, and we still have that idea with outdoor shuffleboard or covered patio, that is primarily for the apartment building, but it'll designed to blend seamlessly along that Woonerf to the park, so it'll seem like different types of amenities and events as you progress along the Wooner.
Yeah, because I guess that's just the one thing out of all this that I feel like could be strengthened. And some of it's just programming for the future on how things are constructed. Where it's like if we even consider parking ramps, we'd want them to be level so they could be repurposed. And what I fear here is as this activity will bubble and this village bursts and that park, which there's going to be a significant investment in with the local option sales tax, you just have this empty corridor between the cafe and the park. It just doesn't feel as active to me, and maybe I'm not seeing the visuals of what it would be like to walk along there. I think it's in the right direction. That's the one question or comment as to why there couldn't be more along that first level, specifically of entertainment, retail, commercial, or even, I think the mention was like 2-story kind of townhome look built into it, where there's like the stoop access, where it feels active. Could you speak to that, maybe?
Yeah, that's primarily, we're trying to hide all the parking, and I think that allows us to blend the landscape in, but we can't go underground with the watershed and the water table. So we're hiding the parking as best we can, and it's actually activating each corner on our building, and then we're working with the neighbor Hillcrest on the idea, because we're changing the grades for the view plane, so they'll have a front porch in the middle of it. So we're really envisioning the Wooner as, cafe, front porch on the office building, and then active, park-like amenities on the other corner, so you'll be able to merge between at each point along that Wooner, have a different active space. And with our parking garage, we are going to merge up and over from the Wooner for those connections. So we're developing the grade and landscaping so that there will be a terraced area that would be a great, seating park-like setting in the middle that has the parking behind it.
How important are your number of parking spots?
We have to have enough. There's nowhere to park on the street here. So we definitely have a bus stop out front, but raise your hands if you take the bus in this room. Okay, so.
Well, I don't live here.
I know, but you're yeah. But I'd add to that. Part of what Jason's talking about is we're building really expensive space, right? This is brand new construction, and it's very expensive because of the foundations that are going into the former swamp underneath it. Yeah. The existing buildings that Hillcrest owns are not expensive space. They're really low rent space. They're $8, $12 a square foot space. Our spaces would be $30, $35 a square foot, right? So triple, if not more. That means that there's all this opportunity that we're now creating for Hillcrest to do other things with their existing office buildings. They can be transformed, and they have the opportunity to move tenants throughout their buildings, empty space to new space. That's part of every lease, right? Especially with office tenants. And the cool thing is when we open up these spaces, we create an opportunity for inexpensive rents. And we all know what inexpensive rents do. It allows a whole different host of other uses to come into the space. Frequently, your favorite restaurant to visit is in some funky space somewhere that's left over, overused, outdated, outmoded, right? That's kind of what the Hillcrest buildings are. So there's a real opportunity here to play with that. We're never going to create that with brand new construction, because instead what we're going to get is the most expensive rents, who probably aren't going to be looking for a side street leading to Fred Richards Park off of 77th to locate their high-end whatever that can pay those rents, if that makes sense. And I know you understand all that, but I think the imagination has to go to what can the use be once we put this in.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate your perspective and walking through that. I totally see that. It's more from the physical construction of, say, the parking. Like, hopefully there comes a time where the people coming to this area and living there are depending less on the vehicle. So specifically that maybe eastern 50-foot strip of the parking garage, to keep in mind how that's constructed to repurpose that space specifically. Having certain utilities stubbed in, certain structural elements located. Like, that's what I'd like to see, just because I agree with you. Like, again, it's desolate now. Like, you line that with this, like, Excelsior and Grand vibe. There's just no destination yet.
Right.
But there ought to be soon, you know?
And with the parking levels flat, we do have that opportunity. And believe me, if we could go underground with the parking, we would here. But with the high water table, we just can't.
Yeah, no, it's, I guess that was just a question of, you know, and that was one of Mick's big comments that I agree with, is like there's this lack of vitality between those two ends. But how could we future-proof that side of the building? Otherwise, like, I'm pretty dang supportive of everything else I'm seeing here. So, thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just add, this might help with I think where you're going with that. In the existing office building that Hillcrest owns, under this zoning, they would be allowed retail uses. So they could activate that part of it, you know, once this is in for retail type destinations.
Well, yeah, I totally agree. It's just like, they could do that, and then it doesn't happen, kind of thing. So
it's allowed by zoning now.
Yeah, thank you.
It would be.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Alkire.
Thanks for the presentation. Just to clarify, the 10-mile-per-hour entrance is the Woonerf, and the 20-mile-per-hour entrance is the park entrance to the east?
We have a third entrance between the phase 1 and phase 2, that's the 10-mile-an-hour bike path entrance, and then the Wooner for designing is 5-mile-an-hour strolling space. So we do have a spot for bicyclists just to the west.
Okay, so the 10 mile per hour is the bike path to the west.
Correct.
The Woonerf is a 5 mile per hour to the east of the new building, and the 20 mile per hour is the park entrance.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, and just not in great detail, but just a kind of a high level, what are the design features of the Woonerf that will automatically keep cars to 5 miles per hour?
That's a great question. And one of the pieces to try to minimize, while there isn't much traffic for our apartment building, there is still traffic, and to have that come in through the back and have that ability, we would try to, with the pavers, and also raise up, you know, as long as it's approved by the city, but to raise up and have not just a speed bump, but a speed table, as you go in there to really blend the plazas together between our building will have a plaza on it, and then create a plaza space in the corner of the 4600 office building. So I think those features, as well as parallel parking stalls, really slow traffic, and, you know, landscaping that is really engaging with the street. So a street canopy over the Woonerf as well. I think if we do the whole menu of options, it should have slow cars moving through that space. If the cars go through there 20 miles an hour, then we've designed it wrong and failed.
Okay, thank you. I had one other question. Director Teague mentioned that we said 10% of the units are 50% AMI, which is fantastic. And he also said that, if I understood this, that the rest of the units were between 70 and 120 AMI. Is that correct?
And they're all market rate units. That's
right,
just,
but they're
you know,
priced to be affordable for 70 to 120% AMI.
We have to say it's attainable workforce housing.
That's really great. So is there a chart somewhere that shows the mix of the units? I mean, of the so 10% or 50% AMI, so the remaining 90%, are they 89%, 120%? Or just what's the mix, approximately? How many would be at 80%?
That's a good question. We don't have a chart for you right now. Yeah. We'll eventually figure it out.
I'd just be really curious about it.
I'd say, well, we have a lot of smaller units, so they're mostly going to fall in that 80% range. That's going to be, I'd say, the vast majority of our apartments are going to be in that 70 to 90, call it that. And then we'll probably have, you know, the corner units that are large facing the park. They're going to push up toward the 120.
Okay.
But that's how we typically build our buildings. Most of our units that we build throughout the metro are generally in that 70 to 90 range.
We really try to design a gradient of housing, so it's not your typical one bedroom and not your typical 2-bed, 2-bath. So there's a whole gradient of sizes and styles of housing to fit a gradient of incomes.
Did phase 1 have the same mix?
What was that?
Did phase 1 have the same mix?
Similar, yeah.
Really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, this one's a little bit smaller unit styles.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before we go to our public hearing? All right, well, thank you. I'm sure we'll invite you back up when we have more questions or as we move forward, but appreciate the presentation. So we will now kick off our third and final public hearing for the night. So first we will hear from residents in person who would like to speak, and then we will listen to those who call in. So to call in, dial 888-504-7949 and enter participant passcode 813740. And as a reminder, everyone is allowed up to 3 minutes to speak. Please give your full name and address, and then Communications Director Jennifer Benarott will let anyone who goes over know if they've reached 3 minutes. So I will start with those in person tonight. Thank you. And then just start with your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Christine Bremer. I live at 6001 Ewing Avenue South. And my comments are in conjunction with Hope Melton, who had to leave before we got to this point. I'm speaking in support of the preliminary rezoning and preliminary development plan for Solheim Companies at 4600 and 4620 77th Street West. First, the Fred 2 development provides 28 affordable apartment units for households earning up to 50% AMI. They will be integrated into the 276-unit apartment building with 248 financially accessible units for residents earning between 70 and 120% AMI, as we just heard. Second, these financially accessible apartments, while not officially affordable, neither are they luxury market rate. They are the disappearing middle income or workforce housing units needed for some 40,000 public and private sector workers who currently come into Edina to work. Wouldn't it be nice if they could live here? Third, the Fred 2 project is ideally located for affordable housing with bus service on 77th Street, connecting Southdale Center, and it's in close proximity to Highway 100 and Highway 494. It also provides much needed direct access to Fred Richards Park for walking and biking. Fourth, the project will greatly improve current stormwater management conditions in this high water table area. And finally, the project conforms to Edina's sustainability policy and the Comprehensive Plan Southdale Experience guidelines. We urge you to approve the preliminary rezoning and preliminary development plan for Solheim Companies at 4600 and 4620 77th Street West. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Steve Brown. I live at 5528 Halifax Lane, a member of the Edina Neighbors for Affordable Housing, which, as you all know, is an advocacy group for affordable housing. I'm here tonight to speak in support of this project. I've identified more than a dozen reasons to support this project, but for now I'm just going to focus on 3. First and foremost, this project provides 28 actual physical homes that will be affordable for people earning less than 50% of the average area median income, These homes will be an excellent location for affordable housing with easy access to transit, major commuter highways, grocery stores, drugstores, medical facilities, and even a park. And they'll be in the Edina Schools District. Second, the developer, Solheim Companies, not only had a very purposeful, creative, and intelligent design in their initial sketch plan proposal, they have been very responsive to your feedback and to that of the City Council. The resulting revised design is even better than their initial strong sketch plan proposal. I believe that work of this caliber has earned your support. Third, this project with 276 homes, when combined with the neighboring Solheim Company's building with 408 homes, will likely bring over 1,000 people to this small area. This Planning Commission and the City Council have often discussed how to create projects that enliven and energize parts of our city. It's a major goal of both groups. These two projects will by themselves provide energy to this area, including the nearby park, and could well be the catalyst for other nearby developments that could add even more energy and vibrance to this area. For these reasons and many more that I haven't cited, I urge you to support this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any others here in person tonight for public testimony? All right. Seeing no others for public testimony in person, I will look to Communications Director Benarott if there's anyone who's called in.
I don't have anyone on the call, and it's been well over a minute, so I think you're safe to move on.
All right. Can I get a motion to close?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the public hearing is now closed. And so with that, I will open it up to questions or comments or whatever my commissioners would like to add. Commissioner Miranda, please.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I think it was a great presentation, and you took feedback very, very well. The cafe, I think, is a great addition. The affordable housing is really wonderful. And I actually like Commissioner Bennett's suggestion that options be kept open for converting the first floor parking space on the west side of the wound or for the east side of the building to retail services, because I think that could be something you might want to do in the future that would make this a better space. But the only real problem I see is also something that Commissioner Bennett mentioned, which is the driveway, which is a completely straight shot to the park, which on the one hand is a great direct connection, but there's literally nothing to stop a car from just speeding down there to the park. If we want to make, there's multiple accesses to the park for pedestrians and cyclists, but I just think it is a shame that there's no more detail on that, that it's to be determined. But something, whether it's a jog in the street or a cross street to stop at, or something to, or speed tables, something to slow down drivers who would just make a beeline to the park. But other than that, I would say overall, this is a perfect example of how a developer earnestly presents a sketch plan, and this kind of shows the benefit of the sketch plan process, right? So, and then they actively listen to feedback, which is rare, from the commission and council, and addresses those concerns, which is even rarer, and it creates an improved project. And I have to say bravo to the team, because I think you did a shot it out of the park on this one. Thank you.
Commissioner Strauss.
No, I didn't really have any new. My comments, the two individuals, Ms. Bremer and Mr. Brown, thank you for your very good summary of that portion of the project. I think you made and underscored some very important features of that. So thank you for your submittals there. Thanks.
I always have comments. I think my point of, strongest recommendation, and that's really once this gets underway, getting really serious about future convertibility of space. And I mean, I think of what we've done at my current house with our renovation of, it doesn't necessarily cost a whole lot more. There's just more time and coordination in place to accommodate future change. And I think that western edge of the Wooner, because we don't know what's going to happen to the east, we can assume good things will happen, but the potential of what that side of your project could become is even more exciting than what you're presenting today, which is already exciting. Secondly, and kind of to echo some of the gravity of this, I mean, I drove by this again today, and I mean, what's underway and what this will become is a village. I mean, there's a lot of people that are going to be right here. And that kind of goes again to thinking of the future of more uses right there. There's stuff across the street, but honestly, you're going to have the Fred right there. You're not going to want to cross 77th for anything if you have it right there. So hopefully more variety of services will appear on that side and be blended into what you do in the future. At least from the sketch plan, Commissioner Strauss brought up wayfinding, and I think if there's any sort of like route guiding to just really encourage the residents to take the circuitous route and avoid the Woonerf, like to do that so that it becomes, I mean, if there's 200 residents, that's still a lot of cars going through there at times. So it'd be nice if most of those just go around it. And then, yeah, I guess the last thing is just thank you for the, I wasn't at the sketch plan review, but it was rare to hear very specific targeted feedback and how it was actively improved upon. I think that did you really well, and how could we disagree with that? So really bravo. Thanks.
I just want to commend you on the affordable housing. I am probably the only renter, I would imagine, on this planning commission, and it is shocking what the rents are doing in Edina. It's really the Southdale area, the luxury apartments that are going up there. They're unaffordable for me to live there, and I can't imagine if I was a nurse or a teacher, where you could live. So I just want to say I really appreciate that you didn't take the easy way out and dump the money in the Affordable Housing Fund, and that you're looking at blending incomes and people together, because I think ultimately that provides a better neighborhood for all of us. If we have all different kinds of incomes, retirees, kids right out of college, single people, families. So good job on that. Thank you.
I think just to build on that, I think it was last week or the week before, so I apologize, I don't remember the exact date, but we had a presentation on the status of affordable housing in Edina, and some of the figures I have pulled up the presentation that was done, and this is 2022 data, the average wage needed to acquire an average price house. So again, this is like home ownership, but that's nearing $200,000 in annual income in the city of Edina for the average house. And again, I just did like a quick Google search, right? Because even I think I don't know what the actual usage of AMI is, but I Googled average medium income for Minneapolis, and for a household, so not even a single, for a household, it's $66,000. And so that means that the average house, and again, like doing math on the spot, right? But the average house in Edina is 300 times the average median income. And so I think that just brings a little bit of that scale of when we're talking about this many additional units in that 70% to 120% range, like how underserved I think that is. So just really, really commend the work. And echoing a lot of commissioners and our public testimony tonight. I think it's clear that you, like others said, like you took all of the feedback, you listened to that, and you incorporated that. I'm excited about the cafe to see what will come there. And I agree, like, this is such an amazing location, especially, I run through that park, and I'm really excited to see how it continues to be activated. And I think that this is definitely the right village approach to this area. So thank you. Any other comments? All right. I did the public hearing, right? Yeah. So now I think it's time for a motion if we want to entertain one. And well, I don't feel like I ever really make motions, but I did want to add, there was, I think, in the recommendation or the report from staff, there were some really good components on like the travel demand management of what they were suggesting to be included. It included specifics on biking and, subsidizing Metro Transit passes, all of those things. Would love to see those incorporated, including the bike parking, which obviously there's that bike shop. I think that the numbers will probably match up to what was outlined in the staff report, but just would really encourage, or if we could even include it in the motion, sticking to that entire plan as it's outlined.
So I'll take a stab at a motion if you're ready. Motion to approve the preliminary rezoning and preliminary development plan for 4600 and 4620 77th Street West, subject to staff findings and conditions in the report.
Sounds good. I'll second that.
Any additional comments? All right. All those in favor? Oh, there are. Commissioner Miranda.
I wonder if you would take a friendly amendment, something along the lines of the street to the park is, how could we do this to suggest to the council rather than to demand it? Is engineered for 20 miles per hour or something along those lines, where something more than what's here is made to encourage that street to not have speeding vehicles on it. Any suggestions for how we might phrase that?
So I'll take a stab at it.
Sure.
Motion to approve the preliminary rezoning and preliminary development plan for 4600 and 4620 77th Street West, subject to the findings and conditions in the staff report. In addition, requesting staff work with developers to ensure that the access to the park to the east of the properties is designed to limit speed to 20 miles per hour. Very long, but effective.
And I'll take that as an amendment to the motion, so we don't have a previous motion that was left hanging.
I suppose I'm restating it.
Yes.
Okay.
That sounds even better. Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Well, this has been approved, and thank you so much for the work that you put into this and coming in tonight. All right. The next on our agenda, after 3 public hearings, is discussing our 2023 Planning Commission work plan. So before our last meeting, which would have been 2 weeks ago, we had a work session where most of us brainstormed ideas of what we wanted to see on our work plan for 2023. And so we are now discussing those items that were brainstormed, kind of going through, talking about, this is going to be very conversational, right? Like talking about those items. And then I think in order to advance it, to move forward, it would be great if any of these items people are particularly interested in, hey, I want to lead this one, because there are a lot of really exciting items, and I don't think that we'll necessarily have enough capacity to lead them all. So there's probably going to be 1 or 2 that need to move below the priority line for at least 2023. We can add it to the parking lot to consider in the future. But I think that's what will most effectively drive forward this process is we'll discuss them, tweak, remove, whatever, and then where we can find people who are particularly interested in leading the initiative so that then staff can take it back and start to fill out the form, the actual template that we'll be using to then present to the City Council for our work plan for 2023. So I think it was included. It is. It's the last page. It's page 236 of your document. And so I'll just kind of briefly read through the bullets that we had come from the work session. So looking at trees/landscaping and the commercial side of it, the next steps within ADUs, expecting that we're not complete with that in this calendar year. Third, looking at conditional use permit conditions and how that can tie into sustainability issues. Again, we talked a lot about the climate action plan and how we could take those items and tie them into our work plan. Number 4 was recycling from construction sites, which I believe was a direct item from the climate action plan. Number 5, these are bullets and they're not numbered, so I might have lost count. But number 5 is a parking continuation. And I think in particular, I was even envisioning, is that something that we want to create a working group around as we continue thinking about what that will look like for Edina? And then 6th was researching potential areas of change. And I know that one might be kind of vague, so I might even ask that maybe even Commissioner Miranda, if you want to speak to what you meant by the areas of change, because I thought that your logic was really sound on that. Yeah, why not? It's a conversation.
Sure. So the when we do the comp plan every 10 years, and what we did at the last comp plan was we looked at our current nodes as they're defined. The previous comp plan had talked about areas of change that might be looked at in the future. But the current one, we just pretty much stuck to the ones that we have. So we've had proposals for projects in areas that are not part of our node. So the Keys Auto on a county road, Vernon Avenue. We have an apartment complex on Lincoln Drive in the west of Edina. So that suggests that these two areas, among others, a third one would be the church having the housing on site at 54th and France. So those 3 areas suggest, and BRT along all of France, suggests that those might be areas that we want to look into for a future research, like we're doing this year with the Greater Cahill program. So the idea here is not to define them or to do a study for any of them, it's to identify them. So basically, look at trends in the city, look what areas are ripe for redevelopment, look for pressures from transportation or housing or whatever, and see, try to come up with some areas that might be of interest that we could then present back to the commission, and then if the commission agrees, we could present it to the council. So it's mostly research at this point.
Thank you. I think that's helpful context.
Yeah, to add on to that, are you kind of just envisioning basically a catalog of different properties, and maybe it's a map that has a legend or something? Because, I mean, that's what's come up. It's like there's these anomaly areas where it's just one site. So it might not be a potential area of change. It is. I mean, that's what you're... Right. We want to get everything figured out so nothing surprises us, right?
And kind of like what we're doing with ADUs now, where we're not coming up with a legislation or ordinances, we're coming up with, okay, what's interesting about ADUs? So this would be, what's interesting about these sites that developers suddenly are interested in?
Sure.
Why are there trends in demographics or transportation or other things that are driving this?
So I guess even opening it up, since we created this list of 6, not that that's not like plenty, but were there any other things that people thought of, or if you weren't at the work section, any ideas that you had that you want to add to the list before we start removing from the list?
Came up, but it definitely came up later, was trying to encourage more of the Southdale Center type of small area plan or focus on that. And I know there's some history behind that, but I don't think we should just forget it. Right? I mean, you suggest it's like, that would be nice if something like this were to exist within the Southdale area plan, the Southdale Center, and what the future of that is. And maybe it's just a discussion this year and we put more work to it the following year, but.
Right. I mean, that could even be one of these potential areas of change or whatever.
Okay.
All
right.
That's a pretty big potential there.
Yeah. I wonder if it will change.
But that, just one final thing on that, the difference between that and these other areas of change is that there's a single owner. And so you need, to get anything significant there, you need their collaboration in a way that you wouldn't necessarily. We've seen that in Cahill, right? Where the original Cahill area, where there's a plan, but the primary landowner in that area is choosing not to do anything really, right? So same situation.
So I'm not really hearing a lot more, which is good because there's 6 items. And Commissioner Miranda, given that you did an amazing job reviewing what these areas of change would be, is that one that you in particular would be interested in leading?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, wonderful. Perfect. Okay, well, that one's done, practically done. What about the rest? Are there any that others are particularly interested in?
I'm wondering about the recycling from construction sites. I'm not sure if that home is with the Planning Commission. I'm wondering if is that more of a sustainability sort of environmental topic that maybe, I'm not sure if it was Commissioner Smith who had this idea. I'm not sure, but is that one that maybe we could talk to maybe the chairs of the Environmental Advisory Committee? Unless I'm missing what the purpose of that is. It doesn't seem to really be a planning commission type of activity.
So it came, I think a couple of us brought it up. I remember I brought it up. I think Commissioner Alkire might have mentioned it as well, in that we were given like a short list of like 30 or 40 tasks of the 200 plus that were identified. And I think it was given that, we see a lot of construction projects coming through, that it might be something that we could look at. But that might even be a question back to Director Teague of, where do you think this should reside from commission board work?
Yeah, I'm not sure how we would put that into an ordinance form. Maybe it's working in collaboration with the Environmental Commission, where we could come up with some kind of a policy where we could put on these big development projects conditions on their approvals for rezoning or whatever it may be, for ways that they can address that. So I see it kind of like a policy that we would require those kind of conditions in our projects. And maybe that fits somewhere in city code. I'm not sure at this point, but I think it's worth doing a collaboration effort.
I guess from my perspective, it doesn't seem like our commission should take the lead on that. Am I just seeing that wrong? It doesn't seem like a land use condition necessarily as more of a process condition to a project, which really is kind of outside of what we decide anything on, right? I mean,
Yeah, it would seem that that commission would take the lead. They provide a recommendation for us, something to use when we're considering projects.
so I guess one thing that came up was when we did the comprehensive plan update, each of us or pairs of us were kind of tasked with partaking and communicating with other commissions, and I don't think we should let that kind of go silent until 6 years from now or whenever we start again. Is maybe part of the work for that is just identifying someone who would want to be a liaison to that group on our commission to help spearhead that or something. I don't know. I'm just looking to simplify our list. Maybe take.
So I guess the question is anyone here willing to lead that? I guess is the question, right?
Yeah, and I also, as you were speaking, Carrie, was thinking, it almost feels like even if it would rely heavily on staff. So yeah, maybe that's one we remove. But
I think we should take it off of what we're responsible for.
But then how do we encourage someone else? Because I still think that it's valuable, and it was one of the tasks that was identified.
Well, maybe we could parlay it to, there is someone volunteers to be in a liaison position with the Environmental Commission. Because it's not just that. If we care about that, there's sustainability that's lacking on every project that comes before us that we ought to encourage, but that's kind of out of our wheelhouse again, but it affects all the construction. So
The trees and the landscaping, item number 1 would be in collaboration with Edina, also with Energy and Environment also.
Yeah, so maybe
that's a cousin of that first one.
Once removed.
Yes.
So, and that's kind of what I was getting at was, do we have a commissioner who wants to lead the charge? Kind of like I led the charge on this, right? Is there someone who, either here or not here, maybe it was proposed by somebody who's not here, who's going to be the liaison to energy and environment?
Well, I'd be interested in working on the trees thing. But not until March or whenever we're done with Cahill.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. But yeah, these would be 2023 plans anyway.
Yeah, so I do that one if nobody else wants it. If nobody else wants to fight me for it. Be good.
Maybe we can also temporarily earmark but validate with Quincy that he continue the work on ADU. I don't know if he was interested in other work, but even just earmark to ask him before making that final. Because I know he's taken a really good leadership role in that.
Yep.
All right.
Jimmy, what do you want to do in 2023?
Well, yeah, I mean, I want to continue to support the ADUs and the potential areas of change I'd like to help out with. I find a lot of interest in that too. So, I'll just be in someone's shadow for 2023. Shadow of a tree, right?
I feel like the work for 2022 on the design review process is probably going to carry into 2023, I would assume, since it's already August next week. So I think I'll stick with that one in 2023. It might take up quite a bit of time.
You think so?
I kind of think so.
We got some feedback on it tonight in the community comment section.
Yes. I think the research of the other cities and getting the flow chart will probably take up a little bit of time. So that's my way of saying I think I'll stick with what I've got.
I'll stay with the parking.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
I'll leave myself with that.
I was sitting behind a guy from Boston, so it was parking that I heard said 30 times, and I'm like,
Wicked.
the parking around Fenway Park just kept going.
Okay, I think we have at least a good next swing, and we'll continue to talk about this, but any final thoughts on work plan?
I think you're right about Commissioner Smith. He seems to be, out of everyone on the committee, the one that speaks most to sort of the environmental sustainability stuff. So I think some of these might be, since he's not here, might be something he might be interested in. Obviously, I can't speak for him, but he just seems to be, out of everyone, the one that identifies those. So
Yeah, and we'll also have to speak to Commissioner Padilla as well about what she's interested in, so. All right. Next on the agenda is chair and member comments.
Based off of the community comment today, one of the residents mentioned the Yancey family, and I've brought this up multiple times because I feel like it is underappreciated and under-communicated. Fun fact, like the entire Grandview area was owned by the Yancey family, so throughout that whole process of even the public works site and even in the framework, there's a lot of guidance and suggestions to naming things. So I was a little disappointed where like the bridge that is being created, even the art that was a part of it, like they weren't a consideration or a name or any of that history. And even with some of the names that we're hearing for the public works site development, I think we shouldn't lose sight of that and should continue to encourage that name specifically to be more prominent in our city, because if you look toward our history, it's an astounding family for this area, and especially their background and what type of odds they had to fight through to pioneer this place. So anyways, I thought that was cool. Someone else brought that up. I'm like, yes, come on. But that was it.
I just finished this week, finally, the book that Commissioner Alkire recommended, Whiteness in Plain Sight. So it had the chapter on Edina and talked a lot about the Yancey family. And it was interesting. So if anyone, and I have a physical copy.
You read the whole book?
I read the whole book, it did take me, I started reading it after you recommended it 6 weeks ago or something, so it took me a minute, but if anyone wants to borrow it.
Just to build on both of those things, this is not a question, not a comment, but Carrie, who's responsible for park signage generally? Because the resident commented about the Tupa Park signage.
Yeah, I suppose ultimately the Parks Director. You know, they did a revamping of all the park signs. Oh, it was maybe 5 years ago or so. But it comes from the Parks Department.
Okay. And then the second question was, is there an option to, I'm not saying this is a good idea or a bad idea, but is there an option to have community comment virtual even these days?
I might look to Jennifer to respond to
I'm
that
going
one.
to chime in on your first question, too. The two signs at Tupa Park are interpretive signs for the buildings at that park. There is one sign for the Cahill School and one for the Grange. Those signs historically they were originally erected and have been the responsibility of the Edina Historical Society. When we discovered that the Yancey family name was misspelled, we stepped in to quickly correct that. That's, in my opinion, embarrassing. So there are newer signs there on old signposts as a temporary measure. And we did work with the Historical Society to make those changes recently. Next year, there is concrete work planned for Tupa Park, at which time new permanent signs will be put up. But that project will be a partnership between the Historical Society, Parks and Rec, and our Race and Equity Manager. Second question, can we do community comment virtually? Yes, we can. We do that for City Council today. Honestly, we don't get a lot of participation virtually, kind of like your public hearings, but the technology does exist to do that. I believe staff have been reluctant to do that for Planning Commission because we don't offer that for any other commission, but the technology does in fact exist to do it.
Okay, great, thank you. So it's something to think about. I'm not recommending either way. That's all I have.
All right. Carrie, anything from you?
A couple updates from the last city council meeting. We had quite a few items on the agenda. One of them was the parking ordinance that was continued to August, so the full city council could participate. That was why it was delayed. We had one member that was absent, so that'll be August 3rd. The council approved the interlochen conditional use permit. They held the public hearings for the 2 school district conditional use permits, Countryside and Concord. And update on the condition that you added about EV stations at Countryside, they're going to do it. They announced that at the city council meeting that they're going to put in the conduit, so it's ready to go with that project. So that was a good thing. That's it for me.
Wonderful. That's fun to hear. Thank you. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.